Hello there, supply chain savants, tech trailblazers, and business buffs. Welcome back to another episode of Gains On, where we tug on the thread of the complex tapestry of supply chain management with a twist of wit and a touch of insight. I'm your friendly neighborhood podcast host, Joe Davis, ready to guide you through the labyrinth of logistics and tech trends. Today, we're diving into a topic that is as exciting as it is essential: automation in the supply chain. In this episode, we've got the privilege of once again picking the brain of Steve Arvis, Senior Director of Solutions Consulting at Gains. Steve's going to shed light on how automation is more of a supporting cast member than the star of the show, fine-tuning the cogs of the supply chain machine to let supply chain pros shine in their strategic roles. From the nitty-gritty of Gains' approach to automation and forecasting and replenishment to the sophisticated symphony of AI and machine learning, we're covering it all. We'll delve into building trust in automated systems, the art of managing by exception, and why dipping your toes incrementally into the automation pool might be the smartest move. So, whether you're a tech guru, a supply chain rookie, or somewhere in between, this episode is your golden ticket to understanding the nuanced dance between technology and human intuition in the world of supply chain management. So sit back, plug in, and let the insights flow. Welcome back to the show, Steve Arvis.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
So I wanted to talk to you today about automation. I know that automation is something that Gains does and does well. And, based on our last conversation, I know we touched on it a little bit about how you can use Gains to automate processes so you're not having to do everything yourself. The discussion of automation always brings up one thing in everybody's mind, I think. When we talk about automation, people worried about, I'm going to get my job replaced by a robot, or, I'm going to be made redundant by technology. And I think that maybe that's a valid concern. Maybe it's not. I mean, we've seen a lot of automation, take place in our lifetimes, just, kind of day to day. There's always the classic complaint that, there's self-checkout at the grocery store is taking away jobs. And we've seen that that's not the case. So maybe you could help us kind of demystify, how automation is used in supply chain and how Gains uses automation specifically.
Yeah, and I'll definitely go into the Gains specifics, but I'm not going to be the first person to say this, but automation, especially right now, it's really like an assistant to your day-to-day life. It's not trying to replace you as a decision maker. It's trying to help you make better decisions and assist you with some of the easier decisions that you don't need to waste your time on. And so in a tool like Gains, in Gains directly, a lot of our customers will find value in automating decisions around forecasting or stocking levels or replenishment decisions or input data reviews. All of those have different aspects that you can automate based on what the system has seen or what you know about your business, such that you don't need to get into the minutia of every single line item that comes up for review. And so you can automate 95% of your business and just flag that remaining 5 to 10% for user review to add the planner's expertise or the buyer's expertise into the actual plan itself, because that's something that a robot's never going to be able to replicate.
When it comes to automation in the supply chain, there are some tasks that you would want to automate, right? You could trust trust to be automated, but then you've got to have human oversight, right? To make those difficult decisions, to make decisions that you really need to have a set of human eyes on. So what type of things do we see, are decisions that you can automate and leave on their own, or decisions that you need to sort of monitor that automation? So I guess I've heard the term managing by exception. Does that apply here?
I think it does, Joe. Yeah. So, I mean, throughout Gains, whether it's demand planning or inventory policy or replenishment planning, I think managing your supply chain in exception-based fashion is absolutely the goal of automation. And when I think about which decisions are the right ones to automate, there's typically a couple of characteristics that really lend themselves well to making an automated decision. So things that are repeatable and very high volume. So things that it's the same decision being made every single day or every single week, and there's not much variance around that decision. So you're buying the same amount of stuff from the same vendor at the same time. Like, at some point you can probably just automate that and go look at something that's more interesting. Or, and this, you could call that repetitive, you call it high volume, what have you. Sure. Sometimes you might also want to have time-sensitive decisions being made for you. So if a customer order comes in and the buyer or the planner is away from their desk for whatever reason, taking a break, no, you have to be at your desk the whole time. That right. Customer order comes in and it's a priority order. Sometimes you don't have the time to wait for eyes to go look at that. Like how can you automatically route that through your supply chain to the right location and get the right inventory to that customer? And sometimes, it's going to be more of a time sensitive driver of that decision. So, high volume, repeatable, time sensitive, those are typically sorts of decisions that are going to be prime for automation. And I do want to caveat this whole discussion by saying that there are different, let's say, levels of maturity in automation too, where you don't need to do everything all at once. Like you can take a step fashion in introducing automation into the business. So one common approach that our customers will take is they might start with, let's say on the supply side, business rule-based automation. And so to your Amazon example, you're going to be reordering, like you're telling Amazon, I want to reorder this every couple of weeks. Right. And that's going to stay going until you manually change it or update that based on your consumption of that product. So that's right. A very valid business rule to run, but the onus is still on the business user, the business owner to keep track of that rule and make sure it's still relevant. Right. When you grow more into AI/ML, that's where those business rules can be dynamic and the system can learn the patterns for you and actually start adjusting that based on everything it's considering, whether it's the demand plan or how the supply variability is trending. So rather than buying paper towels every 4 weeks, you might be spilling a lot of stuff and you might need to buy it every 2 weeks. And the system can learn that over time. Another example is I have two kids in diapers right now, and I could set the size 3 Pampers on Amazon to reorder right. every 4 weeks. But then, as the kids grow, you're going to go to size 4 and size 5, and so theoretically, sure. A machine learning algorithm would be able can learn that you have children that are growing at a certain rate, and then right. You have to change your consumption pattern to a different product and substitute in a different product rather than just buying the same one every 4 weeks. So right. Just an example about how you might be able to grow from a business rule based decision into the buzzword of AI/ML and having this machine learn when you should be making a decision and how.
Is eventually, start out every day, you're helping them tie their shoes and getting dressed. And eventually they get to an age where you could just say, go get dressed and put your shoes on. And that sort of makes your life a little easier. It doesn't mean that there aren't, it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be more challenges. It takes away some of that responsibility. Instead of having you to go through that whole, get dressed and guiding them through that whole thing, they eventually learn to start doing that stuff themselves. So instead of like, here are the 19 steps you need to get dressed and get out of the house, you can now just say, get dressed and leave. And I hate to compare children to robots.
Yeah, that's what I've gleaned from this conversation is that our children are just robots that are machine learning algorithms that learn over time.
Right. But I mean, it is in a way, the machine is learning and kids are learning, right? And you start out with simple tasks, you start out with simple tasks and then you increase to, once that they get that and that seems to be going well and you can trust them that, that they're going to have their clothes on when they leave the house, you can start trusting, the algorithm to make those decisions for you. You can start trusting your kid to get dressed on their own. It sort of frees you up to focus on things that need more of your attention.
It's almost as if the intelligence is artificial.
Yeah. Good point.
But yeah, I think, back to trust though. I think, Joe, you bring up a good point about how there's a lot of trust in this automation as well, because something that you've been doing your entire life, you're now entrusting to a system to make that decision for you, or to at least help you with it. And that's going to take time to adopt. And so it's not an easy transition. So change management is definitely something that I think companies need to think about, or us as individuals need to think about as we start introducing AI/ML or any sort of automation into our lives, because there is going to be that trust factor that has to be there inherently to make it successful. Because if you don't trust the system, you don't trust the decision it's making for you, it's never going to work and you're always going to be second guessing it. And that just defeats the whole purpose. You might end up spending
Right.
more time in your day-to-day than trying to free up time if you're just trying to constantly validate and discredit the decision that's being made. So
Right.
trust is imperative in the process of making this successful. I think the credibility from success stories in the past with our excellent customers, I think it's a good starting point. But even so, any new customer is probably going to want to take their own trust journey or trust fall with gains, and that's okay. And I think it's definitely a maturity journey or just growing over time, where you might start with no automation whatsoever, and then
Right.
by the end of Q1 or Q2, whatever, maybe you do 10% of this decision is automated, then you grow to 25%, then 50%, and you may never get to 100%, and that's expected, but
Right.
you can grow over time and evolve over time as you get more comfortable with the system and how it's thinking about your supply chain.
Again, we're talking about children and robots again. That sort of crawl, walk, run approach.
Mhm.
You come in and you say, here's some easy decisions that I'm going to trust automation to make. And if they don't screw that up, I'll give them a little something more to look at. And then eventually you're able to hand more and more things over because you have built, like you said, that trust in the system that you're not going to end up in a sorcerer's apprentice kind of situation, right? Where the brooms and the buckets just keep,
Right.
filling up and then all of a sudden you're drowning. And I think that's an excellent point that, again, you don't have to run in on day one, turn your entire operation over to automation.
Yeah, and I think that is one thing that differentiates Gains itself as an organization, is that we're not trying to push a complete revamp, or the buzzword is digital transformation of all of your processes right at once. Like, we want to make sure that you're successful in what you need the system to do for you. And once you trust the system, once you've proven value in the system, there's more to be had, but let's do that in a pragmatic fashion rather than trying to do it all at once.
So I've heard the term incrementalism used frequently in supply chain, right? And sort of adapting to a new technology in the business, in supply chain specifically. Is that what we're talking about here? Sort of, by making these moves in small increments?
Yeah, I think that's right. We would absolutely advocate an incremental approach for automation. To your point earlier, if you try to automate all at once, you might absolutely bite enough more than you can chew. And if you do something wrong, then you're impacting the entire business, versus if you try to take that incremental approach, you prove it out in a small use case, and then you move on to the next one and move on to the next one and just get some quick wins each time, proving out the value. And then again, going back to that trust idea, gaining the trust and then expanding the use of it over time.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, incrementalism to me sort of seems like how most things are done, right? Every once in a while, there's somebody who decides, like, you know what, I'm going to be a snowboarder, and so they go to REI and they buy everything that they can that has to do with snowboards. They get out there on the slopes, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh wait, I don't know what I'm doing. So it would make sense to go and rent a snowboard and go on the bunny hill and sort of get your feeling in that, and then gradually either add more specialized equipment as it's needed once you kind of figure out what you need and how that's going to work for you, and then once you feel more comfortable with the equipment that you're using, go up to greater slopes and take bigger risks, because that the risks aren't that much bigger, because you now have the sort of wherewithal or the knowledge to navigate those risks more easily than you would be just to, throw on all your stuff and go to the top of the mountain and hope for the best. Right?
For sure. Yeah, that was a beautiful analogy.
Well,
I think.
Thank you.
I think having that foundation of trust and belief and ability is really critical to the expansion of the use, in this case, of automation.
And we kind of saw this during the pandemic, where folks were using automation to make decisions, but they weren't going in and changing the algorithms at all. And so they just abandoned them altogether because, it was unprecedented. The automatic systems that they were using for forecasting and everything else didn't know how to deal with this data, because we'd never seen anything like it. And so they just gave up on it. And so instead of going in and re-educating, the machine learning, helping the machine learn, just sort of abandoning it and starting over from scratch, which to me sounds like throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that a little bit with some of the customers that we've brought on board since COVID started. So we heard some stories from them about incumbent tools, be it ERP systems or other basic planning tools. They were basically, COVID hit and the tools were not reactive enough, and they were using outdated information, and all of a sudden they're back in Excel doing their planning manually, and they lose the trust of the system that they had potentially signed up to use and spent a lot of money on. And blindly trusting the automation then and not keeping track of it is critical, because if you're using outdated information, you're going to make incorrect decisions as you move forward.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Absolutely. Yep. One last comment I'd make is one thing I'd urge companies that are trying to automate to think about is, what's the cost of a wrong decision? And if I'm thinking about automating my purchasing, let's say, the cost of buying something I don't need is I'm tying up cash in inventory and holding more inventory costs. And the cost of not buying something that I need and ignoring the decision is potentially a stock out or a lost sale or an expedite, something like that. And so as you're evaluating how much you want to automate and what decisions, I think it's really important to evaluate how wrong the machine is or the decision is, and what's the implication of that decision, and trying to think about that in a cost-based fashion, and not just saying, oh, I was wrong, but I was right 99% of the time. So that's great. But maybe the 1% of the time that I was wrong is extremely expensive. And so maybe using an algorithm to auto plan that is not the right decision, or maybe you need to raise the threshold to a 99.9% chance of correct decision. I'm making those numbers up, but nonetheless, I think it's really imperative to put some weight behind the decision that you're trying to automate, and think about it from a cost perspective, not just a time perspective.
All right. Well, gosh, this we covered a lot here today. I just want to thank you once again for coming on the show and talking about automation. I know I learned a lot, and hopefully our listeners did learn a lot as well.
Well, thanks again for having me, Joe. This was a lot of fun, and hopefully you'll bring me back on again if I'm invited again.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you, Joe.
And just like that, we've come to the end of our automation odyssey. A huge shout out to Steve Arvis for joining us today and sharing his invaluable insights on automation in the supply chain. It's been a revelation to understand how automation acts in a supporting role, letting human expertise take the lead in strategic decisions. We hope that this episode has highlighted the delicate balance of technology and the human touch needed in your supply chain processes, and why a gradual, trust-building approach towards automation could be your key to success. Remember, in the world of supply chain management, it's not about replacing people, it's about empowering them. With tools like Gains, you're not just automating tasks, you're augmenting your capabilities to soar to new heights. So thank you for tuning in to Gains On. Don't forget to check out our blog for a deeper dive into today's discussion. Keep innovating, keep strategizing, and remember, in the fast-evolving landscape of supply chains and technology, we're all in this together. I'm Joe Davis signing off. Stay tuned for more insightful episodes that blend the art of supply chain with the power of technology and keep those gears turning. Until next time. Want to stay connected with all things Gains and continue to explore the exhilarating world of supply chain planning and design? Then don't forget to follow Gains on LinkedIn, where you can be part of our growing and vibrant professional community. And for more content, engaging posts and updates, don't forget to like and subscribe to Gains on YouTube. Trust us, you won't want to miss what we're sharing. If today's podcast episode left you hungry for even more insights, we've got you covered. Every episode of Gains On is accompanied by a detailed blog post for those who wish to dive deeper into the topic. Whether you're looking to expand your knowledge or find that special morsel of information, our blogs are designed with you in mind. Visit gainsystems.com for more. All the links you need can be found in the description below. Thanks once again for tuning into Gains On, and remember, we're here to help you decode the world of supply chains, one episode at a time.